啊，我说过那个大马士革不丢的话，
قد كسبنا الرهان وأسقطنا نظام الأسد المجرم.
China just lost one of its major strongholds in the Middle East. China's current plans for global domination have been foiled this time. Its global conquest to take over every single vulnerable state in the world isn't working out. Syria has fallen, and China just lost out big time. And the implications are massive, probably bigger than you might think. I spent a week reading through the human rights atrocities that Assad committed to his people in Syria, and I don't think I'll ever be the same. The gassing of countless citizens, mass murder of doctors because they have the ability to heal his enemies, squishing people to death, torture devices, using people as shields, displacing millions of Syrians across the world. Basically, a more violent North Korea in the Middle East. A mass murderer, one of the most horrific men to have lived in modern times. Would it then surprise you that China was one of his best friends? China was betting on Syria. They wanted to make sure they owned Syria. In fact, I found pro-Assad Syria propaganda all over the Chinese internet. The CCP was literally paying people to make pro-Assad content for the Chinese people. All the way up until the end, saying that Assad would never fall and has full control over the country. And when Damascus did fall, the voices were silent, or they slapped themselves in anger. I kid you not. It's very strange that the Chinese government would be paying people to make pro-Assad propaganda for Chinese people, but it all makes so much sense in the end, and you'll see why. It's actually very creepy. The CCP Western shills were also up in arms over the whole thing. It's very funny that Westerners that support the CCP also love child-murdering dictators. Go figure. This video is brought to you by Extra Wallets. You know, I've never met anyone in my entire life that didn't struggle with Christmas gifts. Fortunately, I have the perfect gift, not only for you, but for your loved ones, for your friends, for your family, for literally anyone, and that is an Extra wallet. Extra wallets are absolutely, positively the coolest wallets in the entire world. They're super well made, super slick, and with a push of a button, your cards just fan out in such a cool manner. In fact, it's the only wallet I've ever been complimented on. Slim down, get all that superfluous junk out of your wallet, and get an Extra, because you and your pocket will thank you. Right now, there's a fantastic sale going on. If you go to partner.extra.com/lawai86 and you use the code lawai86, you're gonna get up to 55% off your order. I highly recommend you check it out. Go get you and your loved ones an Extra wallet. It's perfect for the holiday season. Thanks. Anyway, China paved the way only fairly recently to take over Syria. You see, Assad had only had 6 international visits. 2 of those visits were to China. Otherwise, he'd be thrown in international prison because the entire world had sanctioned him. China became a very fast friend of the Assad regime. Birds of a feather and all that. Anyway, during the Asia Games, China had to send a special team to get Assad on a Chinese plane and then brought over to Hangzhou. There, they established the China-Syriac Strategic Partnership. It's funny, China never thought to think maybe, why does nobody want to deal with this guy? Why has he been sanctioned all over the entire world? Why is his country literally one of the poorest in the entire world? Oh, you see, they did think about it. In fact, they thought about it very hard. They knew everything, all the human rights atrocities and everything that came with the Assad regime, and they chose him for very specific reasons. By the way, I like how they brought Assad to a temple and escorted him with monks. You know, that CCP tradition? What a farce. China doesn't have religion. It doesn't have traditional beliefs anymore. They destroyed it. The Communist Party that leads now, the same one under Mao Zedong that destroyed everything, is the same government it is today. These traditions are only kept alive by the people themselves. It's really rich to have the Chinese government, who destroyed all of China's religion and tradition, to pretend like they represent those traditional values now. China does this often, and it's all for international image. In fact, China is just a barren, hollow husk of a country when it comes to tradition and religion. The crazy thing is they busted out all the stops for Mr. Assad. They only opened the middle gate of this specific temple, the Lingyin temple, when only the most important people come. The most important people. It was apparently only reserved for emperors. Assad apparently went inside the temple to wish for peace and prosperity for the entire country of Syria. Kind of ironic that he's the one that tanked the economy, and China doesn't care. China does this on purpose. They find the dejected, the poor, the broken, the abandoned, the criminal, these kind of countries, and they make them sign their soul away. Assad kept Syria poor, $400 per year, and China saw that as an opportunity. They also saw the civil war in Syria, and China smelled blood in the water. If you spend any time on the pro-Chinese government side of things on the internet, you will think that China has literally won over the Middle East. Hell, you think that they've won over the entire world. BRICS this, countries using the Chinese yuan that, China's infrastructure Belt and Road this, insert random country's economic agreement with China that. China rushed to be the first to establish ties with the Taliban in Afghanistan, and has made significant inroads in Saudi Arabia, allied itself with Iran, and been finding ways to get into the Arab world and getting it to fall into its fold. But Syria was absolutely strategically important to China, and that's why this is such a devastating blow. Under Assad in 2022, Syria actually joined on as a full member of China's Belt and Road Initiative, which is China's neo-colonialist conquest to literally take over countries around the world. It was somehow horrible when the West did it, but we're allowing China to do it right now in 2024. China is an imperial power. It's a neo-colonial power. People keep talking about the imperialist crimes of the West, England, Portugal, the USA. Those days are over, guys. There's a new kid on the block, and it's China. China also rebuilt Assad's military installations, trained its soldiers, sold them rocket launchers, machine guns, sniper rifles, and put together Syria's ballistic missile program. China basically had a client state in the Middle East that it and Russia could use as it liked. Now that Assad has fallen and the new government's about to take over, whether the new government that takes over Syria can establish any coherent government or make it a functional country, that all remains to be seen. However, for China, it's probably a lose-lose. I spoke to experts, and the consensus is that the new government will probably not be friendly to China at all, because their relationship with Assad has soiled everything for the people. That could make Syria fall into Iran's fold, but that would actually just help Iran a hell of a lot more than it would China. They could fall into an alliance with Turkey, which absolutely is not friendly to China. Or the new government could even cozy up to the West, which, again, would be devastating to China. I spoke to an expert that was just in Syria and spoke to the people about their feelings on the matter. Most people were very unhappy with China, as the promises that they had made to help rebuild the country after the Civil War never came to fruition. And in the end, it was all dictator to dictator politics. Assad basically sold the country to China with little regard for what the people wanted or needed. The be-all and end-all is the Syrian people's lives did not improve with China's help. China is now silent on the fall of Assad's Syria. Perhaps it's a bit too close to home to see how quickly things can change under an iron grip of a dictatorship. Perhaps it's a little too close to home to see how quickly your people can change. People who on the surface were forced to support Assad and the dictatorship their entire life, but then immediately celebrated when he fled and the government fell. Perhaps it hits a little bit too close to home to see what happens when your country's economy declines and people don't have what they need anymore, and all of a sudden, the unspoken agreement you had about trading your rights and your freedoms for the opportunity to have money is broken. The silence is deafening. If you like this, you're going to love The China Show. That's the show I do every week with Serpent Zede over on @The China Show. It's a podcast about the weekly events happening in China. It's the best way to stay up to date on China's current events. And don't forget, it's also an audio podcast. So go to wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure you follow The China Show. We'd really appreciate it. And I'll catch you on the next one.